everybody would stare at me. But thank you so much for having me today. I guess chapel is not something I would normally find myself doing, but I was so excited to have the opportunity to connect with Reverend Lindy and with her program. And we invited Amy Nezhukumatathil, the author of this book, because in the English department, we were thinking about what do people want to engage with now that we're coming out of COVID? What feels like something that a large group of our community would be interested in? And we were like, what if it was something joyful? What if it was something that made us feel like there's new possibility and new things to be discovering and get excited about. And so that's one of the reasons we chose this book. Like Reverend Lindy said, it's called World of Wonders. And the book is a collection of nature essays that all focus on a creature or a plant or a phenomenon in nature. And then Amy connects them to her own life somehow. And so the title of the book is World of Wonders, right? And I included this in the description of our chapel service, how she describes wonder. So she says, it takes a bit of patience. It takes putting yourself in the right place at the right time. It requires that we be curious enough to forego our small distractions in order to find the world. And last night when she spoke to the Centenary community, she gave some advice. She said, I have 3 things that will help you lead a really good life. And so I thought maybe I could share that with you. So this is Amy Nezhukumatathil's life advice. She said, number 1, floss. And not flossing the dance, but floss your teeth. She says not enough people floss their teeth. Okay. The second one was to say thank you and to be grateful, to express gratitude. And then the third was to always be curious, to engage with the world in an attitude of curiosity. She said to always be a student of something your whole life. And she said the reason for that is that you'll never feel lonely or bored if that's the way you approach the world, if you're always learning, if you're always thinking and questioning. And so I wanted to read a little bit from her book. Like I said, it's a collection of essays, and they each focus on a creature. And the essay that spoke the most to me was this essay called Octopus. And I'm also going to, after this, share a few more things that to me inspired wonder or curiosity or comfort in my life. And if we have time, I would love to hear if there are things that you have read or encountered that inspire wonder and curiosity and comfort and inspiration. So I'm going to read this very short essay called Octopus to you from World of Wonders. All right? Okay. All right. So, octopus. Octopus vulgaris. A dead octopus turns lavender like the sky over the Aegean just before the stars appear. The only time I've ever held one in my hands, I was on the island of Thasos in northern Greece. My family and I were nearing the end of a month-long stay where I spent mornings teaching poetry to students from around the world and afternoons snorkeling with my young sons and husband in turquoise-colored coves. One day, our host at the hotel, Tassos, yes, his name was Tassos from Thasos, announced he'd be hunting octopuses that morning. Right away, I asked to join him. We usually had fresh calamari about twice a week there, and I was eager to come along and see how this delicious appetizer was caught and brought from sea to table. I grew especially excited because Tassos was a member of the famed Greek Special Forces, somewhat akin to the Navy SEALs, and was known around the island for being able to hold his breath underwater for prolonged amounts of time. Of course, we've all heard about the intelligence of an octopus, but probably each of us won't fully grasp just how smart and sensitive they are in our lifetimes. Each arm of an octopus forms an asterisk that we might as well apply to any statement we make now about its intelligence. Its brain lies just behind its eyes in what is really the body, not the head. And each time the octopus devours a snack of crab or cockles, the brain can stretch itself, if need be, to make room for its esophagus. Octopuses are some of the only animals found whooshing and gliding through every single ocean on the planet: Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, Arctic, and Southern. They're known to wheel around anywhere from pelagic ripples near a shoreline to 6,000 feet below the surface, huddling close to hydrothermal vents in the deep. Tassos showed up on the beach at the expected time, wearing full snorkel gear and brandishing a spear gun. I stayed on the beach with our boys while my husband went into the water with the other faculty and students. The way Dustin tells it, everything people said about Tassos and more was true. Tassos could free dive so deep that the others on the hunt completely lost sight of him, including his shadow, even in the sparkling clear sea. I collected and jumbled smooth white marble pebbles in my pocket while I waited for their return, their spoils, and tried to find bits of sea glass to cheer up my eldest, whose lip was still quivering from the pain of being left behind. I tried to console him that it'd be too cold, too deep, too scary, but this was a mighty injustice, to be left to wander the shore with his mama and little brother, particularly given his love of the hunter's quarry. He had dressed as a cephalopod for Halloween for the previous 3 years, and most recently as a blue-ringed octopus that I stuffed and stitched together for him, complete with eyes made from pop lights. The horizontal slit of an octopus's eye is a door that judges us. I am certain it knows we humans are messing up entirely, that in just a matter of decades, the oceans will become unswimmable to any of us animals. The octopus pupil stays parallel, steady as a raft in calm waters, even if it cartwheels away in a dance, never becoming vertical like a cat's. And the skin around this wondrous eye is marvelous, with the ability to form lashes or whiskers spontaneously for protection if it feels threatened. But even if you make an octopus grow lashes, you can be sure its eye will remain fixed on you. You, a creature whose arms have no neural intelligence or taste sensors, not a single one of the 300 suckers that run down the length of each octopus arm. These suckers contain about 10,000 sensory neurons that detect texture, shape, and most of all, taste. How wild to even have just one sucker on the inside cup of your hands. Just one. For a moment, you think the octopus must have something almost like pity for you and your lack. Once, 2 researchers at the Seattle Aquarium conducted a test to see if octopuses could tell humans apart. Each day, they more frequently approached their 8 resident octopuses with one scientist holding a bristled stick behind his back to poke the octopuses with, and the other holding food. The researchers wore the same blue jumpers and were about the same height, and they also changed which side of the tank they approached. But in less than a week, the octopuses could distinguish them correctly. One even aimed its siphon at the researcher with the stick and squirted water at him. And the rest of the octopuses would start moving with something like glee toward the one holding food. After almost an hour, my husband and the group of ragtag octopus hunters swam back into view. 2 of them, my own students, started running toward me, and I knew there could be only one reason why. They were cradling an octopus, bringing it back to their teacher, who had been swooning and hoping to see one for most of the month. "Hold out your hands, hurry," they yelled, and plop-slopped it into my spread fingers. I could see the octopus starting to blanch pale and pulse lavender in my hands. Not at all like the health-mottled violet and the nutty beige red color I had grown accustomed to seeing in aquariums all my life. Sorry. It's 3 hearts tapped slower and slower, just minutes away from death. But I didn't know it right away. Sorry. Instead, I focused on its golden eye, how it fixed upon my shape, how its arms wrapped and drooped around my wrist and my forearm while it took me in and tasted me. In those moments I held it, how many things it might have felt or known about me. Could it sense the love and exhilaration I felt for it, or my sheer despair once I realized it was dying in my hands? I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm crying so much. I only know that I had never been looked at, consumed, or questioned so carefully by another being. My eldest started to panic. Why is it not moving, Mommy? Let's put it back. It's probably so scared. We tried to revive it in the water, but its lavender body floated to the incoming tide, spectral against the white marble that lined the beach. There had been too much stress, too many hands holding it out of the water. It was all just too much for that creature who prefers solitary sentence, the slow and steady stage of not moving much at all, just taking in the world and the water around them. Everyone grew quiet. Some students slipped away to gather up their towels and leave. My son never ate octopus again. Ooh, sorry. So I always get so emotional when I read that one, and I thought I could do it, but I obviously can't. The reason that I feel so much towards the end there is when I read that essay, I think I thought to myself, the first time, of course I wept. As you can see, I can't even read it for like the 3rd or 4th or 5th time. But I thought about how sometimes when we encounter the world, we don't always understand our impact on it, and how we can be so like maybe excited and impressed and in wonder of something, and then also maybe not realize that we might not be being super responsible around it. We can set in place things that hurt others, even if we don't mean to. And so it was one of those things where when I thought about not only the octopus, right, and the experience she has of holding it, this wondrous, beautiful creature, but the impact she has on it. And what a gift it is for her to share that, because so she talked about to me that as a nature writer, she was really worried about sharing that essay publicly because there are people who would say, how dare you, right? How dare you hurt this creature? But you're a nature writer, right? You know, you're one of these people who's supposed to bring, wonder and light. And so I was really moved by that essay. The book is full of really, really great essays like that, and I hope that you'll pick it up. We have some copies that you're welcome to come by and read if you want to in the Learning Commons. So I wanted to share a couple more, and I promise I won't cry through all of them. I'm sorry. But I love nature writing, and I love the kind of line of especially women nature writers that Amy is a part of. And so another one of my favorite authors is Annie Dillard. Has anyone ever read any Annie Dillard? She actually would not call herself a nature writer, I don't think. In fact, I think she insisted that she wasn't. She actually thought of herself as a theologian, as someone who was exploring spirituality, and nature happened to be where she found that spirituality. And so this is a book that she wrote in the 70s. 1973, I believe, is when she did her pilgrimage to Tinker Creek, which is in Virginia in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So the name of the book is called Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. It's a very famous work in this same genre. But another book she wrote that I've always identified with is called The Writing Life. And one of the things she says in that book is how we spend our days is also how we spend our lives. And she's talking in that book about writing. So if you spend your days writing, you spend your life writing, right? If you want to be a writer, you should write. right? And I'm a writing teacher, so I like to talk about that with my students, right? But I really like that what she's really getting at there is what we do, what we prioritize makes us who we are. And so sometimes that means forcing ourselves to sit down and think and slow down and pay attention. And sometimes that's not easy, right? To use our brains in those ways, to force ourselves to have some patience, right? And to open ourselves up to new things and new experiences. So I think that Amy is probably inspired by, or in, like I said, in a lineage with Annie Dillard. And so I want to read you just a very short introduction, a little bit of the very first chapter of Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. This is from the chapter Heaven and Earth in Jest. I used to have a cat, an old fighting Tom, who would jump through the open window by my bed in the middle of the night and land on my chest. I'd half awaken. He'd stick his skull under my nose and purr, stinking of urine and blood. Some nights he kneaded my bare chest with his front paws, powerfully arching his back as if sharpening his claws or pummeling a mother for milk. And some mornings I'd wake in daylight to find my body covered with paw prints in blood. I looked as though I'd been painted with roses. It was hot, so hot the mirror felt warm. I washed before the mirror in a daze. My twisted summer sleep still hung about me like sea kelp. What blood was this? And what roses? It could have been the rose of union, the blood of murder, or the rose of beauty bare and the blood of some unspeakable sacrifice or birth. The sign on my body could have been an emblem or a stain, the keys to the kingdom or the mark of Cain. I never knew. I never knew as I washed, and the blood streaked, faded, and finally disappeared, whether I'd purified myself or ruined the blood sign of the Passover. We wake, if we ever wake at all, to mystery, rumors of death, beauty, violence. Seem like we're just set down here, a woman said to me recently, and don't nobody know why. These are morning matters, pictures you dream as the final wave heaves you up on the sand to the bright light and drying air. You remember pressure and a curved sleep you rested against, soft like a scallop in the shell. But the air hardens your skin. You stand, you leave the lighted shore to explore some dim headland, and soon you're lost in the leafy interior, intent, remembering nothing. So that's from Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. And if you like what you heard, I recommend the book. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. So I wanted to move away from just writers that inspire me and help me think about wonder and slowing down and paying attention, and move into some writers that are more personal to me and have to do with like things in my own life. So I have some that are particularly about family for me. And so my mom, while I was in grad school, she was diagnosed with cancer. And I remember I was reading this book called Written on the Body by Jeanette Winterson. And the book is actually not really about a mother and daughter relationship, but there's these two characters, and one character is sort of losing the other character to cancer. And so there's this whole section of the book called The Cells, Tissues, Stems, and Cavities of the Body. And it's this deep, deep dive into what our bodies do and sort of like these microscopic levels of interaction between different things. And I remember last night when Amy was talking, someone asked her, how do you stay in wonder of things? Especially when you can get so distracted, or like when there are things that worry you. that make you feel like sad, right? Because wonder sometimes maybe seems like something you can only do if you're happy, right? Does that make sense? Like awe and astonishment, feels like something that takes maybe like a positive tone. And Amy said this wonderful thing was, she said, I'm a learner. And sometimes when something scares me, I try to learn more about it, or I try to engage with it more, because that gives me more understanding or more to reflect on. And so I was, at the time that I read this, very scared. And my mom is fine. Many of you know she teaches here on campus, and we are very close. But this was one of those things that when I read it, I think it was helpful to engage with it rather than to push it aside. So anyway, I'm going to read a little tiny piece from Written on the Body by Jeanette Winterson. So, the multiplication of cells by mitosis occurs throughout the life of the individual. It occurs at a more rapid rate until growth is complete. Thereafter, new cells are formed to replace those which have died. Nerve cells are a notable exception. When they die, they are not replaced. In the secret places of her thymus gland, Louise is making too much of herself. Her faithful biology depends on regulation, but the white T cells have turned bandit. They don't obey the rules. They are swarming into the bloodstream, overturning the quiet order of spleen and intestine. In the lymph nodes, they are swelling with pride. It used to be their job to keep her body safe from enemies on the outside. They were her immunity, her certainty against infection. Now they are the enemies on the inside. The security forces have rebelled. Louise is the victim of a coup. Will you let me crawl inside you, stand guard over you, track them as they come at you? Why can't I dam the blind tide that filthies your blood? Why are there no locked gates on the portal vein? The inside of your body is innocent. Nothing has taught it fear. Your artery canals trust their cargo. They don't check the shipments in the blood. You are full to overflowing, but the keeper is asleep and there's murder going on inside. Who comes here? Let me hold up my lantern. It's only the blood. Red cells carrying oxygen to the heart, thrombocytes making sure of proper clotting. The white cells, B and T types, just a few of them, as always, whistling as they go. The faithful body has made a mistake. There is no time to stamp the passports and look at the sky. Coming up behind are hundreds of them, hundreds too many, armed to the teeth for a job that doesn't need doing. Not needed, with all that weaponry? Here they come, hurtling through the bloodstream, trying to pick a fight. There's no one to fight but you, Louise. You're the foreign body now. So, once again, a really beautiful book. And one of the things I love about it is the time Winterson must have spent trying to think about understanding the body and on those sort of micro levels. Some of it's to me that's just so moving is the idea that the body has become the enemy of itself, right? And that's the science of cancer, right? And so that was very interesting to me when I read that. Okay, all right. I'm going to switch back to a different piece that's not about my family and talk about something that informs my faith and spirituality. So I'm sure y'all are familiar with Martin Luther King, right? And I think most people are familiar with a lot of what he wrote or shared in speeches. A lot of us read those in school, and especially the things that he did early on. But there's this book that came out a little bit later called Chaos, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And it's a collection of his writings mainly about poverty and about class and It's also a lot about solidarity between people. And so it's a very inspirational book to me. And I was thinking not that long ago about Pope Francis, the head of the Catholic Church, and he had a treatise come out where basically he was making an argument for a culture of encounter rather than confrontation. When we encounter difference, that we treat it as a learning experience. And so the stance that he encourages people to take is one of generosity and patience toward someone who thinks and lives differently from them. And so this, one of these things that I love that he says in that treatise is, when we encounter other people in love, we learn something new about God. And I think that's another sort of connection to wonder, right? When we encounter other people in love, we learn something new about God. We can wonder about others in a way that teaches us about our relationship to the divine. So Martin Luther King has this great metaphor, and he calls it the world house. And so I just want to read his explanation of that. Some years ago, a famous novelist died. Among his papers were found a list of suggested plots for future stories, the most prominently underscored being this one. A widely separated family inherits a house in which they have to live together. This is the great new problem of mankind. We have inherited a large house, a great world house in which we have to live together. Black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu. A family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interest, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. All inhabitants of the globe are now neighbors. This worldwide neighborhood has been brought into being largely as a result of the modern scientific and technological revolutions. The world of today is vastly different from the world of just 100 years ago. A century ago, Thomas Edison had not yet invented the incandescent lamp to bring light to many dark places of the earth. The Wright brothers had not yet invented that fascinating mechanical bird that would spread its giant wings across the skies and soon dwarf distance and place time in the service of man. Einstein had not yet challenged an axiom, and the theory of relativity had not yet been posited. Human beings searching a century ago, as now, for better understanding, had no television, no radios, no telephones, and no motion pictures through which to communicate. Medical science had not yet discovered the wonder drugs to end many dread plagues and diseases. 100 years ago, military men had not yet developed the terrifying weapons of warfare that we know today. Not the bomber, an airborne fortress raining down death, nor napalm, that burner of all things and flesh in its path. A century ago, there were no skyscraping buildings to kiss the stars, and no gargantuan bridges to span the waters. Science had not yet peered into the unfathomable ranges of interstellar space, nor had it penetrated oceanic depths. All these new inventions, these new ideas, these sometimes fascinating and sometimes frightening developments came later. Most of them had come within the past 60 years, sometimes with agonizing slowness, more characteristically with bewildering speed, but always with enormous significance for our future. These years ahead will see a continuation of the same dramatic developments. Physical science will carve new highways through our stratosphere. In a few years, astronauts and cosmonauts will probably walk comfortably across the uncertain pathways of the moon. In 2 or 3 years, it will be possible, because of new supersonic jets, to fly from New York to London in 2.5 hours. In the years ahead, medical science will greatly prolong the lives of men by finding a cure for cancer and deadly heart ailments. Automation and cybernation will make it possible for working people to have undreamed of amounts of leisure time. All this is a dazzling picture of the furniture, the workshop, the spacious rooms, the new decorations, and the architectural pattern of the large world house in which we are living. Nothing could be more tragic than for men to live in these revolutionary times and fail to achieve the new attitudes and the new mental outlooks that the new situation demands. We must work passionately and indefatigably to bridge the gulf between our scientific progress and our moral progress. One of our great problems of mankind is that we suffer from a poverty of the spirit which stands in glaring contrast to our scientific and technological abundance. The richer we have become materially, the poorer we have become morally and spiritually. So this was written in 1968, and I always love reading what he was saying about the last 100 years, right? All these innovations that he's sort of reflecting on, right? And I think about how in wonder he was of those things, right? We can fly from New York to London, right? We can walk on the moon, right? And here we are, so many years later, 70 years later, right? And what all the things we have, right? But have we risen in our spiritual and sort of moral lives to the challenge that he posed for us? That's something that makes me reflect. Okay, I have one more piece for you, and it is a little, it's two connected pieces actually. I have recently in the last couple of years become an aunt, and it's one of my favorite things about my life. I don't think I'll become a parent myself, but I love being part of a village that has little kids in it, and they definitely teach me a lot about wonder. So when I was here at Centenary, I took French with Dr. Kress. Anybody know Dr. Kress? He's retired. He's an emeritus professor now, but he taught French, and I took upper level French courses where we actually read books in French. So this is actually my copy of The Little Prince that I read when I was here at Centenary, and it's all marked up with translations and things. There was a part where when I was, so I'm not the only one who cries when I read stuff, just so you know. Dr. Kress was reading this book aloud to us in class, and there's this part where he couldn't get through it without getting teary-eyed. And I understand why now, especially because I have these little kids in my life. And so The Little Prince is this explorer, and he kind of happens upon different places, and while he's traveling, meets a fox. And so this is just a little exchange that he has with the fox. Actually, this is, so the fox is speaking first, so just to orient you in the scene. So this is a conversation between the fox and the little boy. To me, you are still nothing more than a little boy who is just like 100 other little boys, and I have no need of you. And you, on your part, have no need of me. To you, I am nothing more than a fox, like 1,000 other fox. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world. To you, I shall be unique in all the world. If you tame me, it will be as if the sun came to shine on my life. I shall know the sound of a step that will be different from all the others. Other steps send me hurrying back underneath the ground. Yours will call me like music out of my burrow. And then look, you see the grain fields down yonder? I do not eat bread. Wheat is of no use to me. The wheat fields have nothing to say to me, and that is sad. But you have your hair that is the color of gold. Think how wonderful that will be when you have tamed me. The grain, which is also golden, will bring me back the thought of you, and I shall have love to listen to the wind in the wheat. Woo, okay, all right. I got through it. All right, now, last one. This is it, and you can not have to listen to me blubber anymore. This is a poem I wrote. I was at the Black Student Union's poetry workshop last year, and I am not a poet. I am not really a creative writer. I love literature. but I am the professional and technical writer of the English department. So my job is really to teach professional writing and academic writing. But I wrote this and I'm proud of it because I spent some time on it. So forgive my terrible poem, but it's called Mac and Cheese, and it's about my niece, Charlotte. So, I'm in the kitchen. She plays one room away. 4, 5, start. The buzz and whir crowds out her soft, sweet song. My pal today. The bowl is too hot, a risk to her tiny hands. Newly plated, I present her favorite, electric artificial orange. Lowering the spoon, she asks, "Is this fresh?" I lie. "Tanti, it's better when it takes time." And that's it. Those are the pieces I have to share with you today. So, y'all, who brought something to share? Did anybody bring something that inspires wonder in them? Does anyone have one that they can reference, maybe even if you don't have it with you? I want to know what inspires wonder in you. Oh, it's okay. Is there something that came to mind? Are there things that you wonder about?
I find everything that you read so timely. We in CLC on Thursday are going to talk about death and dying.
Mm.
And some of the pieces reference, you can look at death and dying, although scary and, with wonder and curiosity. And when you were reading the part about the octopus,
Mm.
and I love the way you read all of these. I wish I could just sit and listen to you read stories all day. But when you mentioned the octopus in her hand and the violin, my first thought was like, oh my God, it's dying. I mean, you just took me to that place. And there's so many things in this world that bring wonder if you look at it with curiosity.
Yeah.
What about when you walk in nature? What catches? What about looking at clouds, or is there something that catches your attention as you walk through campus? Have you had that experience?
For me, it's interesting to think about all the people that I work around every day or like have classes every day that I don't really know. Like they have lives too, but I don't know their lives. Like it's just interesting to me. Like I'm curious about how that is. It's so strange to be around them every day, but I don't actually know them,
Yeah.
who they are, what they do.
Oh yeah. I think when I think about the piece I read from The Little Prince, I think the reason it affects me so much is that you make a choice sometimes to know someone, and when you do, they become something different to you, right? Otherwise, they're just someone you pass on a path, right? And and they're like any other person in the world, But if you take the time, if you wonder about them, if you're curious about them, if you build a relationship, then you have this connection, So yeah, that's interesting. Like thinking about people as a source of wonder, right? As something you can kind of get curious about. I love that. I didn't think about it that way until you said that. That's really cool.
Occasionally I look around like I don't know that person at all. Like I wonder who they are. Just interesting.
Yeah, that's such a great reminder too.
And it really opens up your world, like when you ask those people about themselves. I have a friend who's very good at starting conversation with people that he doesn't know. And, where are you from? And what do you do? And what? And then by the end of that time, it's like you have a new friend and you've met so many people with different backgrounds and interests. And,
Yeah. that what I said about the culture of encounter, you know, like it reminds me of it almost. I remember when I read it, I thought like he must have been watching a lot of Star Trek, you know, but you know, like the you know, sort of encountering, discovering. It feels like the language of Star Trek to me, but also like in a way, it's really a positive way, like not a language of difference, but a language of like, what are the possibilities, right, of knowing this new person or getting to experience somebody else's life or point of view.
Yeah.
And as I listen to you read, you know, I thought of just the beauty of the words
Mm.
that those writers chose.
Mm-hmm.
Just fascinating.
Yeah, I'm a big weepy mess. Like when I read at home, I'm glad sometimes I'm alone because I cry a lot when I read, mostly because of that. Like I'm always amazed at how people can do that word work, right? You know.
Wish I could.
Well, I think something again that Amy talked about last night was that no one just becomes a writer. You know what I mean? You write, and then you are a writer, right? And she likened it to like musicians who don't listen. Like you would never meet a musician who doesn't listen to music, right? And who doesn't create, right? Or play, right? And so writing is a lot like that, right? So you may not be a writer yet, right? But you could be, right? Yeah. You could cultivate that. I wrote Mac and Cheese. I mean,
How was that process of you writing Mac and Cheese?
well, it was really fun because I went to the Black Student Union's poetry workshop that they hosted in the Meadows Museum, and they invited everybody to do these prompts at the end, and I just took one, and it was like, write about an everyday item, you know, that like means something to you or something like that. And when I spend time with my niece, so at my house I keep little Velveeta microwavable mac and cheeses around because that's all she eats. And so I was like, well, I can write about these mac and cheeses that I just bought, you know, at Sam's in bulk, right? And then I had this memory of her where she was saying that like it's better if it takes time. And I remember being like, oh, you know, like when she said it, because I was like, oh God, you just like the wisdom of children, right? She knew that I had microwaved it, you know, and she knew that it wasn't fresh, you know, and it was a silly thing. She didn't mean it to hurt me, but it was one of those things where like when I thought about it, she was right. It's better when things take time, right? It's better when people take time for each other, you know. So it just came about as sort of like I would like to remember that, and if I write it as a poem, then I'll remember it.
From the mouths of babes.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that like chapel probably ends right about now, and I don't want to hold anybody if you have another class, or if you have to get to lunch and that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed this. Thank you for having me. And I hope that maybe I can come back and people will bring some things that inspire them. I would love to hear what inspires you. What things are you reading that you love or that speak to you, that make you cry? All right. Bye, y'all.